send this link to some of my buddies too, so they can come and check it out as well.
Yeah, Streamlabs took a little bit of time on that, but all right, we're live. Welcome everybody to this little show, Gab Hominem. A title which I am going to once again thank Crystal Laporte for helping me find a name for this. But this week we've got a very interesting guest, in my opinion, a man by the name of Yoon, who is a voice actor himself, and if I remember correctly, you're also an educator.
Hello, yes, I certainly am.
All right. So what? To start real quick, might I ask what subjects you actually educate in?
My specialty when it comes to voice actor education is in the very beginning phases of characterization, what it means to be an actor and what it takes to be a beginning actor. The After working in the industry for a number of years, I come to the realization that the gap, if you will, between the I'm gonna start voice acting, aspiring voice actors, and the professional field, if you will, is far and wide and vast, rather. And I come from an experience as an educator at theater arts. I taught high school for 11 years. And I come from a position and perspective of wanting to help aspiring voice actors to at least, partially bridge that gap so that they can go forth onto even better coaches, and so that they can help them hone their craft and move forward in this industry.
Right. Because I've seen some of your videos that you post on Twitter. A lot of it is very aspirational, and it's actually I find some of it very helpful, not just in the way of being a voice actor, but some of it also helpful in life in general, which I don't see a whole lot of people doing these days. So it's actually very much appreciated.
I mean, it's a first. Thank you. That's very kind. I do it out of my own interest and happiness. Unfortunately, it's a very selfish exercise, I have to admit. At the same time, the art of acting, whether that's on stage or on film or in front of a microphone, is a study of human beings, a study of people, and the more I can bring awareness and happiness and self-awareness into anyone who's willing to watch or listen or to critically think about who they are as a person and as an actor, it can only help. And the actors receive a lot of benefit from it because it allows them to kind of look internally into who they are as a person, as well as non-actors who they can definitely relate with some of the stuff that I post.
Right.
I find it, especially cool and interesting because, I mean, putting it into another context, I myself am currently in a move where I'm trying to set up, get myself reset up so that I can get back to doing some work relying on vocal recording and, things like that. But it's I think it was very interesting that you highlighted, even people who aren't interested in this kind of acting or even acting at all can still take interest in it and still get something out of it. I think that's a super, important aspect of any kind of education is, it should, your goal isn't just to get people to want to stick with the craft. Your goal is to also get people just to see, oh, just because I don't have this particular interest doesn't mean that I can't, take something from this approach and apply it to the way that I see myself. Because like you said, acting is the study of human beings. And I think that's an approach that I don't hear from educators too often, especially in where I'm mainly from, like a music background. You don't really hear that kind of an approach too often. And I think it's really refreshing and really cool that you approach it that way.
I mean, it's any and all theater, good theater educators, any acting educators will tell you that acting is really all about tapping into the authentic aspects of who you are as a person, and your own experience and your own story and your journey, and about using what you know as a person ingrained in your bones and in your muscles and in your heart to a degree, and breathing that in, and literally and quite literally and figuratively a little bit, breathing that into a shell of a character, which comes in a form of in a script.
So I think that more or less establishes kind of the direction we're looking at in terms of what we might be learning today. So I think I'm going to go and start with a question. I like to start these streams off, and I'm planning on starting these streams off as we go forward. I want to try to establish like the context of like how you came to be where you're at, and that means the first question I want to ask is basically where you're from and how the places that not only you were born in but mainly raised in have had any impact on who you are today.
Yeah. So originally, I'm born and raised in Korea, Seoul, Korea, and we moved around quite a bit all around Seoul when I was younger. Um, let's see. Where do I even begin? I'm 40. That's a lot of stories. Okay, so born and raised in Korea, and because of multitudes of family situations and circumstances, we moved around quite a bit. So I never really had a single location, geographically speaking, a location that I could call hometown or back home or whatever. So we were kind of a nomad in that way. Of course, you know, my 8-year-old self don't know that. Didn't know that until later, of course. But I was informed one day that we will be immigrating to the U.S., and I was like, okay, that's okay, that's fine. So we moved to the U.S. When I was 14. This was in 1994,
Ooh.
and landing in the airport, coming out of those gates at LAX, and I'm in LA. I remember uh, I remember distinctly that the smell of the air was different than what I was used to in Korea. The smog and all this stuff. Obviously, we talk about that.
Yeah,
The
I was
allergies
like,
flared
oh,
up, and
LA, yeah, LA. I've been there many, yeah.
but
Uh,
but I was drenched and overwhelmed with this sense of I don't know, adventure. This sounds like fictitious and a bit cliche, but I was overwhelmed with this sense of a new chapter, a new adventure. I didn't know much English back then, even though we studied very hard in school. English was taught by Korean teachers who studied in the book. So that's not the case today, I hear, sort of, apparently. But I knew hello, thank you, sorry, uh, hello, thank you, sorry, something else, and then please speak slower. Like those were the 5 things that I knew when I landed here. So needless to say, I studied my butt off in learning English and attended school and uh, beat up some kids on the first day so to establish my dominance in the middle school system. And I started hanging out with the kids, and then you know how you learn language, you learn all the bad words first, and then it
yes,
expands from there. So,
absolutely.
um, thankfully, the high school that I went to in Huntington Beach, just south of me
Mm,
here, had a student population of about 3,000 students, and I was
wow,
one of 5 Koreans in the
jeez,
entire school.
that's
So
interesting.
I learned English very quickly, very, very quickly. Fell in love with theater day one in high school, and I never really let it go. And graduated high school, declared theater major in college, and about 3 years into my theater performance major, I had that light bulb moment that everybody has at some point in their lives, where I had realized that what I wanted is not necessarily fame and fortune and spotlight, but rather stability, a family,
Mm.
the white picket fence in the suburban household with 2.5 children, that whole thing. Um, but I was selfish. I still continue to be a selfish person to this day, and I did not want to let go of the stage or the acting, if you will. So thanks to my then girlfriend, my current wife, and their families' consultation, I was able to put the two together. I supremely enjoyed directing and teaching to this day, and I just simply put the two together. I'll become a theater teacher. So 3.5 years in, as a theater performance major, I had to switch to English because back then they didn't
Right.
offer theater education degrees. There was no such thing. So you had to get an English degree with a theater emphasis. And then that added about 2.5 years more, 2.5 years worth of English classes to my load on top of that. So I busted my butt at 24 units while doing a part-time job on the side, so I can live and pay for things. I smoked a lot of cigarettes and drank a lot of whiskey during those years. But I got through. I got through it all. Came out and got a job as a English teacher, as a theater teacher, and then everything was great. It was rosy. By then my wife and I were married, had our kids, house in the suburban house, one kid, and then
Not
in
quite 2.5
2016,
yet, huh?
not quite there yet. No. In 2015, my second kid was born. So we were at 2.5 then. I have two
Right.
boys and a dog, so that's 2.5. I
There
guess.
you go, 2.5 right there.
We don't have the white picket fences yet. I guess I don't know. I'm still not sure about that one. And then in 2016, I lost that job.
Ooh.
And after 11 years, I moved from different school systems and things like that to look for better opportunities, obviously. But after 11 years of teaching high school theater, I lost that job in 2016. And the whole thing about because it was really an identity. It was really I was a theater teacher. I was Mr. Yoon, the theater director and the teacher, the theater dad, this whole thing.
Right.
And when all of that goes away in an instantaneous moment, man, I crashed. I crashed hard. Depression. I lost like 30 pounds from not eating. I couldn't do anything, couldn't get up and couldn't smile, couldn't do anything, literally anything. And thankfully, I have a very loving wife and loving family, and I'm so fortunate, and I'm nothing but gratitude in my heart for the support system that's around me, and I owe who I am and where I am to my family and the extended family who offer support. But it really isn't until you're at the very, very, very bottom of the barrel
Mm-hmm.
that life comes into focus.
Mm-hmm.
I had busted my butt to establish this stability for my family, and I had gotten everything that I wanted, and then this happened. So I was like, okay, well, it's time to be selfish and pursue my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And this thought of working as a voice actor had always been like in the back of my mind. Oh, you have a great voice. The cliche stuff that voice actors hear. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna just do it. I'm gonna research the heck out of it, and if I can learn how to, do an oil change. If I could learn how to do oil changes on my own, I'm sure this is something I could do on my own.
Right.
So, so I researched and studied, took classes, and got mentors and read up and crashed and failed many more times, of course.
Right.
And it's just been a steady progression of learning, training, successes and failures, acceptance and rejection, connecting with people, losing people, burning bridges, and making new ones. And after this November will be my fourth year. Fourth year? Yeah, fourth year.
Yep.
And I look back at my journey of 4 years so far, and consistently filled with two emotions: gratitude and happiness. I was talking with somebody else the other day. If I had found voice acting years ago, goodness knows where I'd be today. I don't have any regrets, obviously, but Should if I had decided to pursue like my happiness instead of what I would want as an immigrant to this country, how would my life be different today? It doesn't matter. Of course, it doesn't matter. I'm so content and happy to be where I am today. But my gosh, it's been quite a journey, and I'm so thankful for everyone and everything that's happened.
Yeah, 4 years is 4 years is somehow a long time, but also not a long time at all. Uh, because like 4 years in the grand scheme of things doesn't seem like not like a long time. Especially as we get older, we start seeing like time go by a little bit faster and faster as we keep
Hmm.
going. Um, but like I can see like some of your one of your very first credits, at least according to IMDb, is Tom the Tow Truck as the narrator, and that was a little series that went on, at least according to this, between 2016 and 2017, and just starting simple as a narrator, not even quite. I don't I don't actually know if narrator is really a lead role or
Right. So Tom, Tom the tow truck. Not the it's that production company is a studio called Amuse Networks in France,
hmm.
and one of the fortunate aspects of my journey in this industry is that I offer and satisfy and fulfill a very specific and narrow niche as a
Mm.
Korean voice actor.
Right.
As it turns out, there just aren't that many Korean voice actors out there. So if you're, I don't know, if you're a native speaking Korean and you know how to act, this might be a good time to come in, jump in, and be my competitor.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but right off the get go, I received a lot of attention and saw a lot of opportunities where things came easily my way, mainly because of my ability to speak Korean at a native level and my knowledge and experience as an actor, as a director, as a teacher, and the equipment that I was smart enough to invest in. Um, Amuse Networks is a partner that I've been working with since 2016. In fact, no, that's 2017, early 2017. I got them early 2017, as I recall, and I still do work for that company even to this day, in the form of Super Truck videos and other series that's developed and evolved over time. Amuse is definitely one of my longest running and more definitely consistent client that I'm super thankful for. Absolutely.
Let's
It
open
it
it.
sounds sorry.
Go ahead.
It sounds to me a little similar to a phenomenon that I have become aware of in specifically in Japan, where if you speak English at a native level and Japanese at a yeah, at a an acceptable level, at a fluent level, your work in any field, whether it be music, voiceover, anything like that, immediately is exacerbated hugely. And I think that's actually a very cool thing to note, that just based on where you're from and where you come from, there's different things about you that are going to be attractive to different people who are looking for different kinds of work.
It's also supply and demand.
Right.
There just aren't that many Korean voice actors out in the world, as it turns out. I'm, and if anybody is listening slash watching now or later in the future, can find this data, I'd be grateful. But as far as I know from my limited perspective here, I think I'm the only Korean voice actor who speaks native Korean level with a home studio in LA.
And the weird thing is that I'm not surprised to hear that. Like that's the strange thing is that I'm not going, whoa, really? Like
Right.
that's a very interesting and kind of humbling thing to consider, is just how the accessibility of home studios is kind of this thing that's kind of sold to people as this big thing, but the combination of those two factors narrowing it down so far doesn't surprise me as much as I feel like if I had ever just thought about it to myself. I don't. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's at the end of the day, it's about developing enough self-awareness about oneself and how oneself fits into a specific market or a niche that I serve. And me as an example here about identifying and realizing what I have, and what niche that I serve, and capitalizing and maximizing upon that. Henceforth, my marketing efforts are Korean voice actor everywhere and these things.
Right.
It's definitely opened up some doors for you, especially in this last year, because I believe it's this year that you started going into. Uh, I don't know if it's really fair to call it a higher budget production kind of thing with Leviathan Chronicles.
Oh wow, yeah, Leviathan Chronicles. Golly, yeah. Nobi is phenomenal, phenomenal. A person in charge of that whole thing. Angry Ant Media has been nothing but a pleasure to work with, and he reached out to me one day because he needed characters voiced, and we talked, and he's the nicest guy, the amazingly nicest guy, and I voiced a couple of small spots for that podcast. Um, but yeah, it's just extremely creative, and I don't know if I don't know if you listen to an episode, it's phenomenal. The audio design and the acting, and like I'm listening to it, my ears are exploding. Like I'm part of this. Wow.
Even just looking at the thumbnail, it looks like so grandiose and like I guess an easy word to use for it would be epic.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of things that attract me so much. But beyond that, it's you've seen a few more opportunities come up for you. But again, this is after only like 4 years, which, as I've said before, in the long run, isn't really that much time from when you actually started to where you're at now. It's
And I guess to kind of add to that to a degree, I guess. I mean, I'm also going to attribute my success, credit where credit is due, I suppose, to my training and education as an actor,
Right.
throughout high school and throughout college, and even after graduating college as a theater teacher. If I if you think back to your everybody's educational days, the teachers that you came across are all actors. I promise. Those
Right.
teachers, every single one of them are phenomenal actors who are on stage. It's just their stage is a classroom. I know it well, especially as a director and as an actor who's parading around as a teacher who's done it for 11 years.
Right.
I've naturally become very good at authoritative figures. That's the first and foremost thing. Oh, you need a teacher? I got you right here.
Right.
But at the same time, like I think there's a difference between voice talent and voice actors.
Mm.
And I like to attribute, at least in my view, I'd like to attribute a portion of my quick success, if you will, to my years of acting.
And I think it is something that I was talking a while back, and am still in cohorts with Mick Lauer, if you are aware of him and his work. And one thing that he said to me that rung very similar to kind of what you're saying now is that people focus too hard on the word they hear first. They hear voice first, and so they figure that in voiceover or voice acting that the voice is somehow the most important thing. When really, even just grammatically, semantically speaking, acting is the actual verb. It's voice is modifying the acting, not the other way around. So if you come at it from an angle of the voice is the most important thing, and you don't put enough emphasis on the acting that goes into it, which is actually what you're doing, you're acting, then you're probably not going to get as much work as someone who maybe has a more typical sounding voice, but who can really, actually communicate emotions effectively and within the guidelines of the direction of the character that they are portraying.
The audience, listeners or audience in any capacity, is a very very smart animal. We human beings have an acute sense of watching or listening to a performance, and we are instinctually and intuitively able to discern a genuine, authentic performance and characterization apart from the fake ones. When you watch a movie with bad acting, you can tell. You don't have to be trained in theater to know that. You can tell it's bad acting. When you listen to a audio drama, I suppose, or things of that nature, and as you listen to the actor perform, there's something about it that's not real, and you can tell. Rob Paulson, who's the voice of many things, and he's the Rob Paulson, likes to say that voice acting is little V, big A, and that little mentality, that perspective, perhaps, needs to be spoken louder again, 5 more times to the back of the room. Absolutely,
louder for the people in the back for sure.
That's it's definitely something that becomes a more common thing to hear as you keep hearing more people talking about how to get into voice acting and all that. And one thing that I've heard consistently in the last, I want to say 6 months to a year, is, learn how to act. And it was one thing when I talked with Chris Ayers and Carissa Laporte about a month ago. They said they brought up that doing voice acting is actually more difficult than like stage acting or movie acting, because like in a movie and all that, you can still use your body language to help it out, whereas in voice acting, it's purely your voice, and you have to rely on someone else to do all that body language for you, if there even is like animation to it at all. So that doing voice acting itself tends to be more difficult than on screen or on stage acting.
Yeah, it's. I like to think that it's because we human beings are, naturally speaking, visual animals. If we took away our sense of sight, oh my gosh, this world would go into chaos without question. And the stage actors and film actors do have that luxury of being able to use their physical bodies to express their intent and their character. We don't have that luxury. Everything has to come out through our voice. The one luxury that we do enjoy is that we don't have to memorize things. So there's that. I have nothing but the greatest amount of respect for screen actors and stage actors. Number one for sure. I've been in that world for too long to not have respect for the craft that they have.
Right.
I recently I recently submitted a self tape for this one thing, and just the process of filming myself on a self tape was so like stressful, and it's just not even the job. And I have immense amount of respect, and I recognize the difficulty and the complexity of working as a on screen actor. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal, and my jaw drops every time. So I think that each genres, the individual genres of what we call acting, have their own things that are difficult and monumentally conflicting to a degree. We certainly have that as well, and it's not being visible, not being able to use our nonverbals and the body language to express our intent.
And even having to match the body language and intent of a performance that, as far as body language goes, has kind of been laid out for you to provide that final kind of figurative cherry on top of, which is the voice itself, right? Because again, we're coming from that visual perspective. People are going to, come to conclusions just by the way that, say, your character, let's say in a video or an animated, feature, is moving. If there's even animation, again, we highlighted that some of these instances, it's just voice, and being able to not only separate your performance from that physical motion, that body language that is so important to human understanding, but also to imprint your voice onto the body language of a separate entity, so to speak, is presents another layer of challenge in that same way, I think. And that's another really good angle of looking at it.
Absolutely so. And just to also add on a layer on top of that conversation, even though there is no camera filming as we record in our booths and in our closets wherever we record, the good actors, the actors who are actors, the good actors will move. If you're that brave warrior in the middle of a battle scene, as you yell, as you make that effort sound, you better be swinging that sword. And we are running, in fact, in place. I've done too many sessions where I'm running down the hill, and I'm literally waving my arms and moving my upper body and running. My feet are not touching the floor, moving the floor like I'm running, obviously, but I'm still moving. And the physicality of a voice actor, while it may not be presented to the audience as such, the authenticity lies in the physicality of an actor.
Yeah.
There are many voice actors who are firmly grounded in the physicality and the movement of a character or in a story, and it comes through clearly and beautifully, as opposed to others who are there to simply read the lines.
That is very true. It's for me, when I haven't done too much work, but I've done some work for several like smaller projects that are just putting together. I'm still in the very early stages of this thing. Most of my focus has been on music. But there is a talent to being in a small enclosed space and feeling compelled to move a certain way as you're doing a certain, as you're reading a certain line. You're acting a certain line and you're moving. There have been takes that I've had to scrap because I'm in a small kind of rigged up booth with a mattress behind me and blankets everywhere, and I go to move in some way, and all of a sudden you can just hear it through the monitor headphones that you're using. You can just hear it. You hear a little, and you're like, oh no.
Yep.
There's a talent of allowing yourself to embrace that physicality while not also, ruining the take.
Yeah, and it's a luxury that we are sadly deprived of. The stage actors and film actors have costumes and other actors, set pieces, props, all these things to help to immerse the actor in the story. We have a closet and mattress in the behind us that makes noises. I think it's superbly more difficult. Let me take that back. I think it's superbly difficult on its own as a voice actor to allow themselves to put themselves into the situation using only their imagination.
I find myself closing my eyes a lot.
Yeah.
I find myself closing my eyes a lot, and then again, that adds another layer to not hitting anything around me, including but not limited to my actual microphone. Like I close my eyes and suddenly, your boundaries vanish and things. But it's you have to create, you have to be your own theater tech department.
Yeah.
In a sense, you have to create that landscape for yourself.
Yep.
I imagine that's one end of the voice acting profession. That's like basically continued education. You're trying to keep up with so much new theory, new technology, new methods, and all that.
Yeah, things are constantly changing. I as being a bit of an older boomer myself, I think the concept and the philosophies of acting, at least what acting is, I think doesn't change. Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet many, many, many decades ago, and it still continues to be Romeo and Juliet today. So I think the art and the craft itself doesn't necessarily change or evolve. It evolves, certainly, but I don't think the core of what acting is or what actors are don't necessarily change, as we might certainly evolve. I've seen that anime version of Romeo and Juliet, and it's phenomenal. But the technology, probably the biggest evolution in human society, the technology and the accessibility to such technology. The very idea that I can sit here in LA and talk to two of you, and this conversation is being streamed to YouTube for anyone to see around the world, from a comfort of a few mouse clicks, is phenomenal.
It brings people together. And I live, speaking of geographics, I think this is the first stream I've ever been a part of where all of the people involved were in the same state. We're all in California. And it's very interesting. I live just about 45 minutes south of LA, and ArcKing is
I'm up in
way
Sacramento.
north somewhere. Yeah, you're a little further away. But it's and that is very true. We in our other podcasts we do, we most of the people involved in that are on the East Coast. In places like two of them are in Florida, and it's very interesting because basically then the difficulty that brings in is access to technology, especially as you're starting out, because having a stable income isn't necessarily a given, especially in California, and so that access to technology. I actually do have a question about this, because I think it's hard to say it's overstressed, because it can't really be overstressed how important your setup is to your ability to function as a home studio voice actor or voiceover artist. But at the same time, I think people get a little too obsessed with having the greatest gear. Do you think that's true as well? That there's a bit of a kind of almost a strange form of icon worship that goes to a small boutique shop in Germany called Neumann or something like that? Do you think there's a bit of an element of kind of this, like, people are kind of getting down on their knees and bowing to something that, or do you think that it is kind of, do you think that it is kind of a valid thing and kind of an important thing to consider as well?
Well, much like most things in this industry or about life, I guess in general, the idea of the ultra functional and ultra popular, famous, and ultra expensive gear and the bowing down to such gear attainment is also multifaceted. And my purpose, of course, is to educate. So, if you will, please allow me to educate.
Oh, please, definitely.
The Neumann. Let's start with the microphone. The Neumann. Yes, indeed, a very small boutique shop out of Germany, and who's made a name for themselves with the UA87
and the T107. If I'm not mistaken, the T107 is also extremely important. Yeah,
the UA87 at $3,000 is not anything to scoff, kind of like that, right? But the UA87 has been around for quite some time before voice acting. Studios have been using that microphone for years, decades, and it's built like a tank, and it truly is in my opinion, the greatest microphone for a studio. So it carries a sense of reputation in an industry, perhaps. When we hear the name Rolls-Royce,
right?
Yes,
we know that that's the top of the line for automotive industry. When we start to use it to describe other things, this is the Rolls-Royce of whatever.
As a mechanic, I can attest to this.
No other car. I'm sure some others, but no other cars are hand built like that. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Right.
So in that capacity, whoever purchases a Neumann microphone can reliably depend on the quality of the microphone and the audio that it is able to generate. I think the same sentiment can be said about any interface that are of quality. The converter in there is clean and it's authentic to the sound, usability and adaptability, so on and so forth. Including the TLM-103, the Sennheiser 416, and all the other standards of brick and wall studios around the world. Is it is the TLM is the UA87 better than the Rode NT1? Yes, it is. There's no comparing those two. Absolutely not. But is the TLM-103 better than the Rode NT1? Well, yes, it is. Not because it's $700 more expensive than the Rode NT1, but because Neumann carries a reputation.
Right.
And a voice actor who, especially in today's climate of the pandemic that's currently happening today,
right.
Increasingly and more applications for rosters, emails to clients, auditions that come from agencies. Increasingly, they are asking for the talent's studio equipment. The goal of that, if you will, in the first place, is to standardize, at least an attempt to standardize the audio, so that if they're casting for a video game series and they're employing 10 different actors, if all 10 different actors had 10 different microphones and 10 different interfaces, the audio files that'll come in will have 10 different qualities of audio. And as an engineer, there are magical things that those engineers do to level things out and make it sound as if it was recorded in the same studio. So much credit and much shout out and respect for audio engineers everywhere. That's amazing.
As a studio drummer, the role of the engineer cannot be overstated. It cannot be overstated at all. They are basically magicians in my eyes.
Same. The exact word that I use. They're magicians. It's amazing what they do.
It's incredible.
At the same time, like from a voice actor's point of view, not only does the Neumann TLM-103, the Neumann UA87 AI, not only do they produce great audio that are real and rich and authentic and all these things, it also sends a message to a potential client. It sends a message that says, I take this line of work very seriously, and I've invested in equipment to make sure that my audio is top quality. It's the equivalent of emailing a client from, juneyoon@gmail.com as opposed to juneyoon@voicemodo.com.
That's a very good parallel. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So there's that element. Could you be a phenomenal voice actor working in a closet with a Rode NT1 and still book clients? Of course you can. Absolutely you can. But from the client's perspective, if some other voice actor who sounded exactly like me, who read the same script exactly the same way that I did, and recorded all the same lines and with the same intonation and inflection, and the casting director received those two files from the same email address. I don't know, and one of them said, "I work out of a closet that I put together with a bunch of clothes and sound blankets and foam, and I have a Rode NT1 on a Focus Scarlett Solo." And this other proposal has Studio Bricks 416, TLM-103, Apollo Twin, Avalon 737. I'm going to go with the other person.
Right. I mean, Neumann and Apollo Twin, Neumann and Universal Audio together is just...
It's a phenomenal combination.
Anybody who can name a more iconic duo, I will buy that setup for before I can even afford mine. Because I'm not ashamed to admit I am running through an M Audio Air 192.4 and I use an NT1 as well, because I mean, let's be honest, it's the best microphone for the price for that price range and often used with budget things. The audio The audio response is comparable to higher end mics like the U87, comparable, but it isn't the same. And also that $300 price tag, while it is amazing for you to be able to get quality that will get you to a professional level, if your vocal talents, of course, are up to par. The goal should be, and the goal is for me, that as I get more, and even for music production, my of course I want a U87. Of course I do. No one in their right mind doesn't. But I think it's very important to acknowledge the fact that that should be, if you are taking this kind of work seriously, whether, of course we're talking more about VA here, but whether it be music, VA, anything that relies on clear, crisp, dependable audio, your goal should be to shoot for that high-end setup. But also, your goal shouldn't be to immediately jump. I'm suited for this industry yet. I haven't been around enough. I haven't done enough work to know if it's something that I should be completely invested in as far as VA alone goes. If I didn't have the music stuff behind me that I'm actively going to college for and learning, to become an educator in myself, I wouldn't be shooting to try and achieve a financial situation where I could get myself that setup, right? But putting it as a goal, not necessarily bowing your head down to it all the time and saying, I can't be good enough until I have this gear, but working towards that gear, really working towards getting that setup to grow, to kind of, it's almost like buying a new pair of clothes, right? You don't, you buy yourself a new pair of clothes as you grow, right? As you grow out of your old pair of clothes, you buy a new pair. Focusing on it in that sense is, I think, a more healthy way to approach it. Would you agree?
I mean, I started out when in the very first days of my journey. I set up a little. It wasn't even a desk. It was one of those TV dinner table thing that you fold out, the slide the legs under to make it into a
TV
stand.
tray.
TV trays. Thank you. Yeah. It was a TV tray with a towel, and I placed it in the corner of my garage. And by then I had researched some things about audio treatment or whatever, so I took all the towels that we had and just hung it all around the garage corner and pretended that it worked perfectly fine. My very first microphone was a Shure MV88.
Oh.
It's a tiny little lightning port-based microphone that plugs into your iPhone.
Oh.
That was my first microphone. And I would have my laptop with the script, and I would record into my phone using that external microphone that was professional quality, which is fine. And then I read up on the importance of having a treated environment. So by then, again, thanks to my specific niche, I had made some money and saved them up, of course, to reinvest back. And using that money, I bought the Whisper Room that I used to work out of, along with the Rode NT1 kit. That was a big day. Oh my gosh. One of those milestones, the goals, like you were talking about, the milestone days when that truck arrived with the Whisper Room. I set it up and did test recordings, and of course it was amazing. Oh, it was absolutely amazing. I think I cried that day pretty hard. But having those milestones ahead of you, and just being able to write in the auditions and being able to communicate that I have a Whisper Room with a Rode NT1 made me more marketable, which got me more jobs, which got me more money to reinvest back into this business that I'm running as a voice actor. And the day this Studio Bricks arrived was also another big day. The day that I was able to purchase this 416 was a big day. The day I got the TLM 103 is a big day. As an educator, I'm a person who encourages others to set goals, short-term, actionable, attainable goals.
Right.
And it's these series of successions and series of attainments, if you will, that moves an actor's career forward. And one day you look back and you go, wow, like here I am.
That
You
kind
know,
of ties into another question I wanted to ask is because it sounds like it took a lot of mental work to put yourself in that mindset of like, all right, I got to save this money doing this so I can invest it into this equipment like this recording space or this microphone, whatever the case. Um, but that just kind of sounds like one of the financial challenges alone. But what what other challenges came with this growth of your ability to voice act, and how does those challenges play into the kind of person you are today?
the direction. I think with any voice actors who are starting out or who are currently in the trenches, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
one of the bigger, I don't want to call it a problem, but one of the bigger hesitancy, uncertainty perhaps about their journey is what's next. And how do I do this better? How do I become more marketable so I can make more money to reinvest back? How do I grow this thing? Grow this thing as a business, grow myself as an actor, so on and so forth. Um, in the very early days, I didn't have that. I found information on as a teacher, research and looking things up and encouraging students to find information, to do research is in my bones, is in my blood, kind of. And I'm a person who practices what he teaches. So I dove in, researched day and night, and voiced day and night. My wife is very angry at times because I'm in the garage recording. It's like 2 a.m. I'm still haven't finished yet recording and researching. Um, we have a very loving relationship now, no worries. But it was getting a little there, you know, and balance is very important. Let me
Right.
put that out there for now. But I didn't have guidance. I didn't have a mentor that I could go to ask questions. I didn't have a person who could contextualize the mountain of information that's out there about voice acting to my specific journey, which is part of the reason why I teach now, to offer that to other people so that they don't have to go through what I did. But once I found my coach, my mentor, readrudyvoice.com. He's an actor in LA, represented by Abrams, A3, formerly known as Abrams. In the union, he's been a voice actor for 30 plus years and all these things. I came across Rudy at Reed, took his classes, and even to this day, I go to his like workouts that happen every now and then, and we drink together, and we're good friends, which is great. And if I didn't have Reed's guidance, I honestly don't think where I would be where I am today. So that's what I would point to, shine a light on, perhaps. I think having someone who could not necessarily hold your hand and walk you down the path, but rather open the door and turn the lights on so that you can see where you're going. I think having
Mhm.
somebody like that will be very beneficial for everyone.
I mean, even in my new house that I just moved into, I think I can find a little bit of a parallel to go through. When we first moved in, we've been here for a little over a month now, and the moving process. We've moved in, but we're not done moving yet. We I'm I found a space where I can get some nice acoustic foam and build a booth for my vocal recording, whether it be for whatever it is, any kind of VA or mostly for music. Um, you know, but one of the main challenges that I'm still struggling with to this day is knowing which light switches go to what lights. Because we walk into this main room and there's little plates on the wall that have four switches on them, and there's multiple of them in the room because our house is laid out very strangely. And there's one there, for example, there's one switch that's near a doorway that leads to a courtyard that we have. It's kind of it's a weirdly shaped house. I won't try to describe it; it'll take forever. But there's this the only way to get to the garage is to go outside onto this large patio type thing and walk to the garage. It's right there. There should be a door to it, but there isn't. And you have to go outside and walk down all the way on the other side of the house near the doorway that leads into the kitchen. There's one light switch that turns on a single light all the way across the patio right next to the garage door. I figured this out when I was trying to find my way through the kitchen because I couldn't see. I had just stubbed my toe on a wall and stumbled into the light switch and found it. And I flicked the switch hoping it would turn on a light inside so I could avoid stubbing my toe again. And instead I get this one little light near the garage door on the other side of a courtyard. and it was, I think, and in that moment, I whispered loud enough to wake up my dad. I said, God, why didn't someone tell me what freaking light switches go to what light? And my dad came up and said, Aidan, it's 1 a.m. What are you doing? So it was very, and I think, that same kind of thing, someone to show you what light switches turn on what lights so you can, avoid stubbing your toes to find them.
Yeah, today the lights in my house are all on Google Home, so I don't really have switches anymore.
That's the goal.
my dad has been going nuts installing those smart switches all over the house, so now he can just talk to Alexa. Hey, Alexa, turn on the lights, and kitchen lights will go on, or the TV room lights will go on, depending on which one he directs. But it's I'm too old-fashioned. I'd rather hit the switch myself.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I put my kids in the timeout and tell Google to give me 5-minute timer, and it just does it. I love it.
Perfect. But Alexa's my mentor.
That's hilarious and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna go to the other half of the question. Is how have those? Well, actually, I think he did kind of answer that, which was how did all those challenges of getting through this profession affect who you are today? Not just as a professional, but just as a person in general, a father, an educator, a Twitter personality, whoever, whatever the case. How do those challenges affect you today?
Significantly, I would say. Some portions of me have remained the same. The idea of an educator who exists to educate others so that they can rise in their own journeys, in their own contexts. And I derive a phenomenal amount of happiness from watching others rise and elevate. I tell this story every now and then to people who listen. The best part of working as a theater teacher, for me anyway, is always opening night of a show. And in opening night, and if you're a stage actor, you're acutely aware of this feeling. We do our circle time in the back, and everybody gets in places. The first cue drops, curtain opens, and we do the show. And and everything else from that point on is all automatic because we've rehearsed it so many times that the lines that flow out, the fight scene, the music, the dancing, whatever it may be, the special effects is all automatic because we've done it for so long and so many times. At the end, the last cue drops, we go to black, and the audience starts clapping. And everybody knows to come to the front for the curtain call, the bow. And when the time comes for the lights to come back on so that the audience can see the actors that they're clapping for, there's always that deer caught in the headlight look on the actors' faces, who have realized for the very first time on opening night that like it's over. They've done it. They've successfully performed in a show from beginning to end, and there's a house full of audience members on their feet clapping to celebrate and congratulate them. And there's this really interesting and unique and eclectic facial expression that you never see at any other in any other context than that. And that moment of watching the actors collectively go, "Oh my god," is always the best moment for me, because that's when they realize they they work, they performed as a legitimate actor, if you will. And the cast party afterwards, the notes that happen, things of that nature, is all part of that. But that split second realization when they go, "Oh my god," that's always the best moment for me. So in that regard, when the people that I help book roles and submit lines and invoices and have a website, and June, look, I look at this demo that I recorded with so and so director. Look at this new website that I just revised to make it better. Blah 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 blah. It's always happy moments. And as a father, I can't help but want to protect people, my own kids from themselves, as well as other forces in the world. But even in our accepting and generous and compassionate and empathetic community that are voice acting and voiceover, there are still bad actors who are looking at us with, and no puns intended, I apologize, with with ulterior motives like money and scam and other immoral things. And it is my desire, innately, naturally, just for me, I guess, wanting to protect people from a fatherly standpoint. Am I their dad? Of course not. Of course not. We're all strangers, you and me both, and everybody else. But because we're in the same journey, because we're standing in the same path called voice acting, I consider everybody a colleague. No matter how old, how young, if you just started yesterday, I consider you a colleague, and I want to help, and I want to guide. It's just in me. What's fundamentally changed, though, is how I view myself as an actor, of achieving and of pursuing and achieving my happiness. My main strong focus had always been somebody else, a student, my kids, my wife, my family. I had always put myself second. That's how I grew up. I was taught that way. But it was really, really strange and somewhat difficult, if you will, to put me as a priority, as a person, as an actor. So that was something I had to get over eventually, and I have, to an extent.
Right.
But yeah, it's been quite the journey, and I can't wait to see how much I will change from here on.
Well,
It's
you're only 40. There's still plenty of time left for you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that I joke about how old I am everywhere I go, and it's because if you're a high school theater teacher, with each graduating class, with every year, calendar years that go by, you age like you do, but your students don't.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Your anchor never changes. Yeah, that makes sense. That's,
So
yeah.
I'm growing older, but the people that I work with, the students that I work with, remain the same age year after year after year. And every day for the entire school year, working with teenagers day in and day out has made me really grasp onto this concept of being an old man. And that's a trait, a character flaw, if you want to call it, of me. I look at it as a comedic kind of a thing, obviously, but I always find that to be super interesting and enjoyable to a degree.
I remember the first place that I actually found you was you did this thing. I think it was like a month or two ago, where you decided you were just gonna follow all these different people, and you knew a lot of people noticed, and you made this post that basically said like, "Why did I follow you? Just because I wanted to." And then I think it was like a week or two later, you did this thing where you just kind of like unfollowed a random number of people, not a lot, but just random people, and then you made a post about it saying, "Why did I unfollow you? Just because simply because I wanted to." But that doesn't like invalidate or make you lesser than you actually are. That's just how things happen sometimes, or something to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still we can't ignore the power of the social media that is today. Here today in 2020, at least how it is now. I'm sure it'll evolve over time, but in 2020, we don't go to websites when we go online. We go to the more experienced generation, go to Facebook. We others go to Twitter, others go to Instagram, others go to TikTok and other places. Sure, but other than having a specific purpose for shopping or pay the bills or socialize or whatever, like, do we visit websites to get information anymore? I don't think so. They exist. They exist to be indexed by Google. So if we need to look things up and we can access it, sure. But when was the last time anybody went to a website to get information? I think we go online today to be on social media. And because of that reason, and this is a rubby area that I talk about every now and then. We've come to a point where having a certain social media presence is starting to and has been affecting casting decisions.
Yes.
Why? And I ask my students, why is this? And some of them have an answer and some of them don't. And since I'm here to educate, I'll give you the answer. It's free marketing.
Yeah.
If I'm cast by a studio, by a production, and hopefully, and in an ideal world, and hopefully my audition that I sent in represented my acting ability, and whoever's in charge thought that my voice and my character and my acting was a good fit for their project. Hopefully, and I certainly hope that's the true and the only reason why I'm cast. But I'm also painfully and acutely aware that having a larger social media following means free marketing for whoever hires me, because I'm going to be excited to share about it, which means more attention to the project. It's business. With that said, I don't care about how many people follow me and how many people I don't follow. I initially in the beginning, I followed anyone and everyone who had the name voice actor in their profile. Because if I can add just one more number to their follower count, then I'm helping in some way for them to be selected, because follower number, the presence counts. And then it got ridiculous. And my feed was becoming this mishmash jumble of content and posts and things of that nature. And it got to a point where I couldn't see content that I wanted to see from the people that I wanted to see it from. So I still very much support the idea of following voice actors who have voice actor in their handle, in their profile, and giving them that follow so that they can have that +1 in their follower count, which hopefully will help them in future casting. at the same time, now I want my feed, my timeline, my content that's shown to me by Twitter algorithm, to be genuinely the things that I'm selfishly interested in. I made a few videos about this, my quotes and talks, about curating your feed in which you consume with your mind and with your eyes, with your brain, with your heart. And there are so many things in this world that are out of our control. But the timeline in your social media platform is in fact in your control. And it's within my right. If I want to unfollow everybody today, I can. No police will knock on my door and haul me away to Twitter jail. Hopefully, I don't know. But that is within my control. And since and that day, it took actually 2.5 days. I went through every single one of the people that I followed and scrolled through at least 3 pages for every single one. And if I liked what I saw, I kept them. If I didn't like the content that I saw, I unfollowed them. and then at the end of that process, I made that post about why did I unfollow you? Because I felt like it.
And yeah, I think that's, it's good. Again, it's I think it's very similar with, I think I personally believe that most people, I know that there are certain people who say I really don't care about the numbers and genuinely mean it, but I don't think that it's a purely honest expression in most cases, to say that I have no care for the numbers whatsoever. However, I think it's the same thing that you can talk about, when we talked about the gear. There's this feeling that people are getting on their knees and, bowing down to the numbers, and I think that acknowledging that the numbers are there and perhaps setting goals for yourself about having a presence, because of course, like you said, it's business. And unfortunately you can't, as I'm going to my music school, one of the things that I'm becoming acutely aware of is that they're not, yes, right now in my first couple semesters, they're teaching me the basics of music technology. They're teaching me music theory. They're teaching me blah, 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 blah. And I'm learning these things and it's important for me to know them. But what the school's actual purpose is to teach you, you can't just be a good musician. You have to be a good businessman too.
Correct.
You have to know how to conduct business. You have to know how to establish yourself, because companies nowadays are not looking purely for talent. They are looking for talent. Now, some people say that they don't care about your talent level. That is false. Okay, they do care about your talent level. That is a hefty chunk of what is going to get you jobs as a studio musician or anything, is whether you can perform what is necessary. But the other parts are very important too. Do you have a presence, and do you have other things under your belt? And it might seem daunting at first, but it's nothing that a little bit of resolve and a will to put oneself out there can't get you started on. And if you acknowledge the numbers and continue to put yourself out there, the numbers will come. If you bow down to the numbers and focus purely on your numbers, they won't. Because you're focused on a result. You're not focused on what's getting you there. If you focus on the short-term goals that will get you to the result you want, that result will come almost as a surprise at some point.
Where was it that I heard before that you're focused too much on the answer and not focusing on the problem to solve the answer or to get the answer?
Right. You're not focusing on solving the issue. You're focused on, oh, I want this. Okay, cool. Now get there.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that as well. I initially started my social media journey on Instagram. So I have a profile on Instagram, of course, and Facebook and LinkedIn and all this stuff, of course. And I had Twitter. I created my Twitter account back in 2018. And I would make post or make a piece of content or a post on Instagram. And I would take the same content and post it on Twitter. And then I was like, I'm sure there's something that can do this automatically for me because I don't have time. So I found IFTTT, right? And I set it up so that whenever I posted on Instagram, IFTTT would take that content and cross-post it on Twitter and LinkedIn and other places, Facebook and other places. And I was like, why isn't any of these numbers rising on Twitter and on Facebook? Blah 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 blah. Lo and behold, sure enough, because I'm a I'm a doofus. It's because I was using it as a platform. I was using it as a marketing billboard. I got super serious about Twitter in February of this year. So 8 months ago, just about 7 months ago, I guess, something along those lines. And then in February of this month, I had 112 followers. And other folks that I've spoken to use words like meteoric, and it's not. I don't say this with the intent to brag. I'm just not that guy. But I've not changed the way I behave, the way I interact with people, the way I create content, the way I conduct myself online. None of that has changed. I'm too old to change that. My feelings and my approach about interacting with people online on social platforms have not changed at all. And I'm a firm believer that people are attracted to others who are passionate about what they do. And I've not changed the single way I do interactions and engagement and content creation on social platforms, other than to personally step on to Twitter and just do what I do. And because it wasn't an automatic cross post, because I came here in person and started interacting, creating content, and I'm fortunate enough to have attracted, I suppose, these lovely folks' attention. I like to think that it's because the passion, that passion. I like to think it's because the happiness shows in my interaction, in my conduct, in my business, in my marketing, is such a thing, my content creation, my daily videos. I like to think that voice acting is my happiness, and it shows, and it's demonstrated on a daily basis.
Well, I do think it's kind of compounded with current events, with everybody stuck at home or not being able to do much because everybody else is stuck at home. Whatever the case, they see somebody who's who either is happy or is definitely like showing that they're not letting life beat them down. And I think that's actually really inspiring to a lot of people, which is something we need a lot of nowadays.
And as happy as I am, and as glad and honored as I am to be a force that helps others, it is not my intent. If I'm helpful as a byproduct, great, absolutely great. But these videos that I make, the posts that I make, and the information that I spread around where I can, is all derived of my own selfish, stubborn, and relentless pursuit of my own happiness. To be quite, and I've said this publicly so many times, and if that makes me a selfish person and everybody should unfollow me, so be it. If I wake up tomorrow morning and have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 less followers tomorrow morning, I would be okay with it, because I'm gonna do what I do, and I've done what I've done, and I'm not going to stop.
And no one should expect you to. And that's an approach that I think a word that isn't given the credit that it deserves is the word relentless. And if you are relentless in the pursuit of your own happiness, you will find it.
Mm.
If you are relentless in the pursuit of building bridges, if you are truly relentless, the part that I think most people miss is they say, no, I intensely desire these things. I intensely move, blah, 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 blah. Yes, the desire is very intense. Are you relentlessly moving and making steps?
And more
or are you
importantly, do you
relentlessly
have the
pondering? Right.
discipline to be relentless?
Right. Relentless. Yes, that is an amazing way to put it. Relentlessness is a condition which requires discipline.
Mm.
It's not a brutish, a brutish sudden, explosion of. No, relentlessness is a state of being that if you have the discipline to maintain it over a long period of time, you will get things done.
Yeah.
And there's two ways that people can react to a situation where you realize that you've been, I call it tire spinning. And it's something that has happened to me recently where I've just kind of realized I've been making the same mistakes. I've been rushing to do nothing. That's kind of, a thing that hits people sometimes. There's two reactions you can have to that. You can either say, I've been doing this for so long, I've been tire spinning for so long, I'm just tired. Or you can say, let's change the tires out and let's start driving up this mountain right now. Yes, it might feel like you're starting over. And yet, when has starting over and doing something better ever actually made the final outcome any worse? I think it's, and that relentlessness is that state in which you're willing to start over. In order to be truly relentless, you must be willing to start again and do things better.
And I'll tell you, the words like relentless and discipline and other vocabulary words of the same magnitude and caliber are scary things. Mm-hmm. There are words that indicate and suggest hard work and sweat, blood, and tears. But when the relentless pursuit is about happiness, and you're mm-hmm. happy in that pursuit as yes. you pursue it, as you relentlessly and keep yourself disciplined enough to relentlessly pursue it, the things that make you happy and the process also makes you happy. It's easy to do. It's easy to do because you're happy doing it. Mm-hmm. Then words like relentless and discipline don't seem so daunting.
And then as people start to use them to describe you, if someone describes you as relentless, take it as a compliment. That is a good thing. That is a good thing.
Just don't tell them it's easy because it's happiness.
Right, exactly. Don't tell them that. Let them figure that out for themselves, because once they do figure it out, it's going to open so many doors for them, and then you're going to have more competition, and we don't want that, do we?
Shut this down now.
No, we got to stop it. We got to cut. No.
Zach's coming after us now.
Yeah. But no, and that's I think that it's, as someone who's just getting started to actually, not necessarily realize, but more come out of the denial stage of saying, maybe I do play a little too much Titanfall, maybe I do spend a little too much time doing absolutely nothing, only to wake up convinced that I'm taking steps, it's I know I can't be the greatest spokesperson for this because I'm 19, but there really isn't any time that is too late to change that mentality and to start writing lists. Start writing a list. No, you're not going to look at them every day right away, but try to, keep working. No one's perfect. And then eventually, once it becomes a habit, once opening your calendar has become a habit, which it has just barely begun to become a habit for me as I've started college, getting my homework done on time still isn't quite a habit yet, but I'm working on it, mm-hmm. And as those things start to become habits, and you start to see those rewards. You start to feel good. You go to bed feeling tired for the first time. That's a feeling. You know, these things will start to become less chores, less, you know, drags, less, you know, I don't know. Really, the crux of what I'm saying, to stop rambling because I have a habit of doing so, is the hardest thing to do is start doing something. Once you start doing something you enjoy, regardless of how daunting the task might seem, you'll sometimes find yourself having trouble stopping, having trouble calling the project done. And I mean, that if you found something that sucks you in that much to where you have trouble calling it done and releasing something, you're onto something. You found something you like. And now the challenge gets even harder, and it's finding a way to actually start calling it quits sometimes and starting to actually finish projects and putting them out.
Well, at the same time, you also don't want to rush anything because, like, I'm sure June can speak to this better than I can because I've only been at this for like a couple of months at this point. But if you were to try to, like, rush out an audition recording or a final take of a line or something for whatever it is that you're recording for, if you were to just rush it out and not take the time to actually like make it work and make it in a way that's comfortable for you, if you try to rush it, it's just going to end up sounding like crap.
And it's going to come off as disingenuous, inauthentic, because a good actor, takes the time to analyze the script, analyze the self, and figures out the authentic points where those two roads intersect.
Right.
And does their best they can to represent the character and the story as authentically as possible.
That is very true.
But it's
at
the same time, it's that's the kind of thing that I would apply to just about anything in general. Is just don't rush it. Like if you're going out to, I don't know, apply for a job, or if you're trying to go and get some new clothes for some like event that you're going to be going to, assuming that it's safe to do so nowadays. You don't want to just like grab your things half dressed and run out the door to whatever it is. You want to make sure you look like you're ready for it. You want to make sure you have everything you need for it, like your wallet first of all. Whatever paperwork you're doing for signing contracts or signing employment paperwork. You don't want to just rush the whole thing, and you don't want to end up stepping over other people along the way.
And part of that, and part
acting
of that
training is about acting. Study of acting is studying of people. Mm-hmm. See,
right.
Don't rush into things. It's absolutely true. It applies on stage, on screen, in front of a microphone, as well as in life.
Right.
You know, part of getting, but no, my job interview is in 30 minutes. I don't have time to, get myself all completely freshened up. Maybe you should have woken up earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a self call out post on my end. And I think it comes down to, in order to be a good, especially, and this is coming from, again, more of a music perspective, because that's where I have most of my experience as an educator myself, at a music school already. If you're feeling frantic and you're feeling like you don't have time, it's probably because there's one or two things about the way that you, mainly really your circadian rhythm and your morning and nightly routines, just the basics of being a person, really. If you're feeling frantic all the time, it's probably because you haven't quite gotten a lockdown on those yet. And I'm if at any point, June, feel free to jump in with anything that you have about, just the way that you conduct yourself in your personal infrastructure carries over to your work in ways that are, like direct, and like, just that idea of being patient No, but I have to do this tonight. Maybe no, you don't. You can go and get some sleep and do it tomorrow. Sometimes you can't, but if, just having the patience to wait for tomorrow, but also having the drive to get up when you say you're going to get up in the morning,
Right. That story is a little bit different. When your 4-year-old comes rushing into the bedroom, Daddy, I'm hungry.
Of course. And this is why when you don't have kids, you should get the best sleep you ever can, because when you do have kids, you actually have an excuse.
It doesn't matter if it's 5:30 in the morning. No, they're in the room. Daddy,
right.
Daddy.
They're chanting. They're doing their mommy.
I could tell once they're teenagers, it's going to be an absolute 180, because I remember my dad used to work for a mortgage company back before the housing market crashed. But it was a job that was like 2 hours away, because we were living in this town. It's only I want to say it's an hour south of where I'm at right now. But the commute from there to where where he was working at the time, 2-hour drive, because it was basically from, let's call it the same distance from Sacramento to the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically,
that's fair.
Yeah, but consider that it's Bay Area traffic. I often found myself waking up at 4:30 in the morning when I'm expecting to sleep all the way until like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning.
I love how you use the words "all the way until" and then immediately follow it with 6 or 7 o'clock. And that's sorry, that's just me being having an awful sleep cycle. Continue.
Well, as an adult, yeah, it definitely draws more perspective for you, because nowadays
you just called me a kid, and you're right, and I hate it.
I'm 28. I'm only 9 years older, but that's it. Nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, it's
half my life that you're older, dude. That's a big gap. That's 1.5. Like that's
it's the perspective for me is that I'm waking up at 4 in the morning to get ready for work nowadays. Because I have to take an hour to get ready for work, and then drive a half an hour to get to get to my place. But back then, my dad, waking me up at 4:30 in the morning when I want to sleep all the way until 6 in the morning, or 7, so I can take the 20-30 minutes to just throw on my clothes and get going to school.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that draws a lot of perspective for you on how much that sleep can make a difference for you. But it also draws into perspective of like how much things change, over that time. Because as Yoon was saying, 5:30 in the morning, for a kid to be running around, but give it another like 10 years, it's going to be a complete 180.
I kind of want to point to that aspect too about sleep, for voice actors, especially the beginning ones. So important, like so monumentally and crucially important, because that's when the vocal cords heal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you're sleeping, is when you're on vocal rest in sleep, your vocal folds are recovering from that day's use and abuse. And sleep is probably the number one most important thing when it comes to vocal health.
Right. I'm figuring this out definitely. Yeah. In some ways the hard way, especially because I'm getting up at 4 in the morning to get ready for work, and was like, well, I gotta start getting to sleep by 8. Oh, well, it's 10. I'm sure I could survive on 6 hours. And then on those nights where I'm getting like 4 hours of sleep because I'm up late recording something, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be miserable tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm not gonna assume, right? It's of course it's difficult. I also have those days as well. I was just 4 hours and kids are here and it's this whole thing. Sure. And you have to do what you have to do. That there's no. But then, as long as that doesn't turn into a habit, right, where you're only sleeping 3 hours because you're up till 3 playing About Us or whatever, Among Us, About Us. What am I talking about? I think that's also kind of goes back to having that discipline, to pursue this happiness. And nightly rest, sleep specifically, is one of those discipline areas.
Right. So I want to go to a somewhat different subject now because, as a voice actor, you've definitely grown a following, as we talked about, a little bit earlier. But I've brought it up before with previous guests in that having a larger following tends to bring more and more of those like problem elements when it comes to people, like people who will harass you for whatever reason they can think of. But it's that type of thing where you probably wouldn't have dealt with it if you hadn't gotten them as a follower. For whatever it is, they ended up finding your content, and whatever the one situation is that they don't like, they'll give you endless crap about it. The one example I usually jump to as my, the biggest example I have is the voice actress Laura Bailey, who voiced the character in The Last of Us Part 2.
Right.
And after that game came out, so many people were just hating her character. But for some reason, they thought it was a great idea to start giving the voice actress, problems just because they didn't like the character. But that can extend to a lot of different things, like voice actors. Yeah, do get a lot of that, but so do regular artists who do commissions, like Aidan here, or animators.
Hello.
Yeah. Like one that I brought up before is Ashley Nichols when she had just moved to a house in the Bay Area like a couple of months ago, and then the fires hit.
That was God.
Yeah. And then she had to, she was basically put under an evacuation order. But because she had worked on Hazbin Hotel, which is a show about hell, people started coming up with all these different jokes about like, oh, hell, haha, fire. But to her.
And then some people came up with not so joking things about her, kind of bringing this upon herself by working on something healthy. And that was a very loud minority, but it was still, I saw some of these posts and it was pretty freaking awful.
And I'm sure there are people who are politically motivated too, because that has definitely appeared before. But there are people that have had, to varying degrees, larger followings, and that, as far as I can see, tends to come with people among that larger following that will be more of a problem. So what I want to ask you, June, is have you dealt with that on your end so far? How do you usually deal with it, and what would you usually advise to people going into this kind of profession, and how they can deal with it, and what kind of things they can look to help them out with it?
Yeah. The Laura Bailey situation was a really unfortunate one.
Yeah.
And I commented on that incident, and the way I see it, at least from my perspective, is that if everybody around the world are absolutely free, and they have the right, of course, to hate any character they want. I hate King Joffrey so much. So much. I want that
is
little,
another
little,
great
little
example.
dude to just. At the same time, I marvel at the amazing acting ability of Laura Stoll, who was able to bring that emotion out of me.
Right.
Just with her voice and the visuals, of course, but with her voice. And she made me feel those emotions. And as an actor, there's no greater compliment than that. So as audiences, as a society, perhaps, not only do we need to logistically recognize that actors and characters are different things, people altogether, at the same time, to celebrate this amazing acting ability that stirred some kind of an emotion inside of you, to celebrate that, whether it was a happy emotion or a sad emotion or anger or rage or depression, Someone's portrayal of a character stirred human emotion inside of you. That's a feat. That's a successful actor, and we should be celebrating that rather than taking our feeling for a fictional character and dumping it on top of another human being with her own feelings and emotions and wants and desires.
How dare you do your job so well is basically the
Precisely.
that's how it comes across. And I think, as far as reacting to that, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because I've done a couple things as well, and I've gotten different things, but I haven't gotten too much of that. I mean, how and I won't know until it comes my way, right? I won't know until any kind of anything like this actually greets me and says, "Hello, I'm that thing that you've been thinking about. This is the moment where I, slap you across the cheek," right? I won't know exactly how I'm react, but I'm thinking if people come at me and say, "How dare you do your job so well?" I'm going to say, "Thanks."
Yeah.
But I don't know. Have you, June, have you had to deal with anything like that?
Personally for me, professionally for me, and I'm rather grateful and I have gratitude that something like that has not happened to me, and I hope it never does. I hope to put out enough content and enough PSAs and writings and narratives and shows and interviews like these. I hope to put out enough of this to educate the general public about the accessibility that they have to actors via social media. Because we didn't used to, right? Back when the dinosaurs were roaming the boys,
40 years ago,
you couldn't reach Jennifer Aniston. You couldn't reach Brad Pitt with a simple at, and the world has fundamentally changed in the entertainment industry and in terms of being able to connect with other human beings. And we have this avenue where we can directly access people that were previously inaccessible. And because the internet is a platform where people can say things and it'll get published, quote unquote, there are people who will take advantage of that convenience, perhaps. I myself have not experienced it. And again, through opportunities like these, I hope to prevent it happening to me and happening to other colleagues of mine. Absolutely. But should it happen to me one day, when someone comes around harassing me for whatever reasons, I would see a moment for education. I would see a teachable moment. It's a theme. It's a terrible, terrible thing. It's a part of me, and I can't get rid of it. I would communicate. I would talk. I would be like, "Hey, man, or what's wrong? What's going on in your life that you had to take the 5 minutes out of your day to pour this negativity thing on me? What's happening with you? Let me talk you through and try to help you." That's the approach that I would take.
Have you had to deal with things like that before when you were still teaching at a school?
Oh my God!
I was about to ask. Yeah,
of course. And those types of not oppositions but conflicts, perhaps, or complaints maybe, came from all fronts: students and other teachers and parents and administration, whatever and whoever it may be, colleagues. And one avenue, one solution, one method that's always worked is communication. A lot of what we perceive, I believe, a lot of what we perceive as conflict is simple. In most of the cases, is simple miscommunication. Whether that be a lack of information or misinterpretation of information that was communicated, it's simple miscommunication. And through conversation and communication, we can resolve most things. Most things.
Mhm.
And if we can eliminate most of these conflicts, then I think we're in a good place. Does this mean that the entire world's problems can be solved with communication? No, of course not. Russia, Belarus, here, there are some very big problems that are happening in the world here in this country, in our industry, that will not be just resolved by communication only.
But it's
I
always a
think
good
that's
start.
why it is. It certainly is. But I think that's why we're seeing protests and riots, the things that we have not seen since the 60s, since the
Mhm.
Vietnam War, perhaps. Um, I think we're in a very interesting time in history where things are changing in a very significant degree,
Right.
Mhm.
culturally as a society, and
Mhm.
this is no different.
I can see
That's
where
very
that's
true.
coming from. When the pandemic hit and all the states are starting to lock down, I remember saying to myself something like, "We had I think it was it the Spanish flu, I think, that hit the U.S. in the 1920s or like the
I think
early 20th
so.
century." Yeah, there was a massive pandemic that happened early 20th century, and people were like staying away from each other and all that. And I remember seeing the lockdowns happen. And I'm just it's starting to feel like we're experiencing something like what happened back then. But then all the protests start happening, and June brings up a good point that we hadn't seen something like this since like the Vietnam era. And now I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, wow, it's a good point. It's probably a similar like feeling, like vibe in the air that was going around back in the '60s.
I think
I
so. And I think it's kind of what I think people fail to realize, and what I think history classes fail to adequately teach, is the idea that these things do happen every so often. And just because we are where we are now doesn't mean that they won't happen, right?
Mm.
Just because, and the same thing can go for one's personal experience. People succeed every now and again. And just because you are where you are right now doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed or that you will always feel this sense of success. Um, I think we have this very strange, there's a very strange paradigm. We look back and we see all the ups and downs, and we can talk about them very clearly and honestly with ourselves or choose not to. But when we look forward, we tend to see the same thing no matter what, right? We all have kind of this outlook on the future, right? Some people see a plateau, some people see a constant rising action, some people see constant ups and downs and complete chaos. And we're never right completely unless we do very drastic things to either, become relentless, right? Become disciplined and relentless. You can ensure that you can ensure more upward motion, I guess. Or you can not do those things and ensure that, and minimize the likelihood that that upward motion will happen. Um, but I think we have an obsession with thinking of things as, oh, this is where I'm at and this is where I'm going to be, and rather than acknowledging that no, things can happen, and you should do your best to influence the way things happen by what you're doing right now.
Mm.
And just like how we're seeing a shift in perspective as a society about Black Lives Matter, about the injustice, the inequality, racial things, and as well as um, proper representation of roles in media. Um,
Mm-hmm.
where we're seeing the BIPOC, where that those letters being thrown around. Um, in the auditions that are coming down from agencies, I can personally attest that diversity and inclusion is becoming this big theme, and it didn't used to be. It didn't used to be this important element of a casting decision. And if the society itself can change like this via action and via communication, I optimistically believe that we can reshift and refocus an audience's mind about not harassing an actor who voiced a character they might have hated.
Right.
And maybe even beginning to love that actor more for voicing a character that they truly came to hate.
Exactly.
That's how I pick my favorite actors, is if they can play a role that I hate.
I guess it's a
Dustin
double-edged sword of
Hoffman
that
and
whole trolling thing. Then
Dustin Hoffman, for example. Brad Pitt. A lot of those guys, the ones who can play the. His last name's Hainsworth, I think, the guy who did Loki. Those are just some examples right off the top of my head.
Tom Hiddleston.
Tom Hiddleston, that's it. That those are those characters that stick out in my head as characters that I just am like, ugh, I don't like you at all. Those, I look at who the actors are and I go, I like this actor. I really like this actor. And I do think that through effective communication that we can start to get some of the people who are a little too, I think, anxious to find some conflict,
right?
Something to engage in, right? We talk about, I mean, to make a quick little war analogy, when you're playing your videos, they say, engage at will, right? People become anxious to engage, and they don't realize that there's another kind of engagement, which is enjoying. Enjoying something is an engagement. Talking to people, ideas, and maybe discarding a couple of your own for something a little different, maybe something a little closer to, or maybe someone else's view who has convinced you. Those are engagements. Those are conflicts, but they're not reductive. They're productive. They create new connections. They create new friendships. They create new opportunities. If I really had it my way, purely, if I really was just like, if I truly boil it down to what I would like, to how I would spend a Saturday, regardless of any other things, I would still be asleep right now. Right. I would love that. But I love this more because I'm doing it right now. Right. I love this more because it's an engagement. There's no conflict in sleep. Right. You're resting. There is an engagement happening here. I'm active mentally and to a certain extent physically. Standing is surprisingly active for someone who's so used to sitting down. I've recently got a standing desk. And so it's like I feel like I'm getting somewhere and I'm creating something. And
I'm an old dude who's sitting in a chair that's really squeaky. Because my knees are not what they used to be.
I'm sure the audience has been hearing the creak of my chair because it's like that.
Get off of my lawn!
Yeah. Shaking your fist, You
millennials!
Gen Z with your gizmos and your suddenly not so trendy little handleless segways.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens when Gen Alpha starts growing up. So I'm gonna get to a couple of questions from the listeners real quick before I have one final question for June. The first one comes from Wendy Young. Says, how do you focus yourself before you audition or work?
Oh, okay. My process is pretty adaptable to others as well. So, Wendy, feel free to steal. Ready? Here we go. When I wake up I take that back. When I'm woken up in the morning, rudely, I might say, I have a set routine of turning on some lights via Google Home, because 2020, hello, and going into the kitchen and making coffee, making the kids breakfast, and they're eating at their table, and I've got my coffee, and I'm sitting at the table with them with my iPad, and I'm reading the news of the day. I open the news app on my iPad, and I read out loud with my voice. And I try to do it in different contexts. As a reporter, as a judge, as another character, as myself, in different emotions and different intents and different approaches and storylines. And my kids get a kick out of it because they're hearing Dad perform, which is fine. It's still good, like to them. I'm sure one day they'll be like, "God, Dad, shut up." That day is coming. I know it, which is fine. But I take in the morning. I sit there with my coffee. I know I need it. Because I'm old. I need that coffee and those news articles. Number one, so I can be informed about what's going on in the world. We can talk about the bias of the media, but it gives me an idea of what's happening in the world that day. It works on I work on my cold reading skills because I didn't have those articles in my hand for days on end. I'm just seeing it for the first time and I'm reading it. So it gives me cold reading practice. At the same time, it warms up my voice in the process. And when the time comes for the kids to go to school, my younger one goes to preschool because he needs a social interaction. They're super strict about COVID, which is why we feel comfortable letting him go to there. And as a young boy who's 4 years old, he needs like social interaction as part of the growing up, early child development. My older one is in 3rd grade, and he goes to his room for distance learning from his teacher over Zoom and things of that nature. So, and when everybody goes to work or school or whatever, I sit down and at my computer, and in the morning it's about emails and casting calls, communication, a little bit of marketing. I go through a process. And I'm done usually by 10:30, 11 a.m. And by then, Wendy, my body automatically knows that it's time to record. So my booth door opened, not automatically, but it opens at 10:30, 11 a.m. And I come in here and I'm mentally and physically and habitually ready to record that day's audition, whatever it may be, or that day's work, or that day's chapter, if it's an audiobook or whatever. I've put myself again. It's the discipline. I have enough discipline and self-awareness to go through these series of steps on a daily basis to put my body into that rhythm. So I don't necessarily perhaps focus myself before auditions or work. I'm automatically ready. Of course, the analysis of the script and the character and of what I'm trying to achieve and attain in this one performance, in this one audition, is all done at the desk, of course. But like my body physically and mentally knows that it's time to record. Because I'm on that habitual schedule, So setting up a routine like that can be immensely helpful, just physically, and it automatically puts you into the right mind frame and physical state. I hope that helps.
So the next question I've got is from Karma Bites, and that's Bites BYTES.
Nice.
He says, Mr. Yoon, I would like to ask how you have been able to climb the metaphorical rope of challenge in voice acting. I also want to say thank you for being my inspiration. I would be honored to speak with you sometime with certain beginning methods for getting myself out there.
Yeah, okay. Fortunately for me, when I got into voice acting, I already knew how to act, the methodologies and the practice and the rehearsal, and how to generally portray a character, that information had been digested as well as practiced for over a number of years. So in that capacity, I had a very strong head start. If you're a beginning voice actor, as you say you are, I guess, learning how to act, because voice acting, learning how to act is going to be probably the number one most important element of starting your journey, or at least going in your journey and climbing that rope, perhaps. Newsflash: casting directors don't hire actors who are not good actors. That's and in this day of COVID, the the quality of audio that you can produce, in addition to good acting, is also paramount. So, in addition to an excellent, at least, and not maybe not even excellent, but usable and believable and authentic acting ability, and the logistical capacity of being able to produce a clean, usable audio, and with those two, and maybe some practice slash help or guidance about marketing. Right, you could be the greatest actor in the world with the most expensive equipment, but if nobody knows you exist, you're not going to work. Right, so I would take those three elements: your your ability to act, your ability to create usable audio, and your ability to put yourself out there to market your voices to whoever wants to listen needs to listen, and combine those three into a process or a series of steps, or work with a mentor on how to implement those three different areas of this industry, of this business, then I think you'll find that climbing the rope, if you will, becomes a lot easier.
Becomes a habit.
Well, rather, that is the process of climbing the rope,
Right.
I guess, improving those three areas.
A key word that I'm hearing in these responses is the word process, and I think it's an incredibly important concept to stress. Is for a while now, I've had all the steps in my head. I've had the schedules in front of me. I've had the things like that. The only thing stopping me from achieving all the things, and the thing that still affects my ability to get the things done that I want to get done, is not the knowledge of the things I need to get done or the time to do so. It is the act of getting started. And I think, as we, with that theme of process, I think it's extremely important to highlight that.
Absolutely. I have I recently started teaching young aspiring voice actors, young in heart, let's say young at heart, all ages, of course. I recently started teaching beginning voice actors, aspiring voice actors, how to act, because that's my specialty. I've worked with high school age beginning actors who are some of them, of course. I've been acting since I was 5, Mr. Yoon. Sure, great, you're fine. But I've worked with literally thousands of starting actors. So I have this really acute and specific set of tools, a tool set, if you will, on dealing with aspiring voice actors and reframing their perspective to see what acting is, and then improving their craft. So, and I've looked around, and there are, of course, many excellent coaches who will take people on to teach them about the craft of voice acting. Sure, but I specialize in beginners. And I don't mean that in any negative connotation. We were all beginners. Everybody was a beginner, of course. We have to start everybody's journey with the first step, right? There's no journey that starts with 1,000th step. That doesn't exist. So in that regard, I have a website set up for that purpose. I don't know where this will be in the notes or whatever, but I gave it to our lovely hosts, and hopefully they can distribute that information as we go. At the same time, too, I want to make it clear that I am not a voice acting coach. I am not. I am an acting coach, just an acting coach. It's because this is because I am still a student. I'm still attending classes. I'm still attending workshops and doing privates with the coaches that I go to and the mentors that I go to. I'm still learning. And I'm not that guy who learns something from this person and turns around and I'm a teacher. I'm just not that guy. But one thing that I do know, and have a credential in because I've completed the courses and have done it for 11 years is teach beginning actors. So that's what I offer. So once a student turns into a proficient actor, they may not be an amazing voice actor. That's perfectly okay. Once that person turns into a proficient actor, I refer that person to another coach. Because one, it would be an please forgive my Korean, but it would be an asshole-ish of move on my part to be like stepping on my coach's toes. That's not cool. In this industry where everybody knows each other, that's not cool at all. And I respect my coaches too much to be doing shady stuff like that. So I would refer them. I would deliver you to their door, like shiny and ready to go. So that they don't have to deal with, oh, you're a new beginning actor. The two of you can hit the ground running. That's what I serve.
Pardon me for my ignorance, but what does that word mean that you just employed there? I haven't. No, I completely understand that. And as a person who teaches drums to young students at a music store near me, it's the same way for me. And it's often I've noticed this is going to go very quick. I apologize for the tangent, but and of course, let me know if this applies in your field as well. The clinicians and educators who get on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine, J.P. Bavay, Mike Johnston, Jojo Mayer, all of them are incredible at their craft, incredible educators. They're also the people who I notice go to the most lessons on their own when they have free time. They're the people who are going to study with other people, even people who aren't as successful as they are or aren't as well known. They're constantly they're taking lessons with these people to try and find new perspectives that they can apply to their teaching, and to find more people who they work with well, and more people they can learn from. And I think, and as a person who has begun to educate people myself, who I've worked at, really fresh out of high school, my first job was a drum instructor at a music school, and I've never wanted to take more lessons than after I've started teaching. And does that carry over into what you do as well? Do you notice that the people who are very good at doing this education thing are also the most involved in learning actively themselves?
Dave Walsh, who is famously well known for his True Tell method in the commercial realm, is a phenomenal coach who has his own methods and his delivery style. Mark Cashman, who's also in the commercial realm for over 40 years now, has his own style of delivery and his teaching program. And Nancy Wolfson, I can name all Dave Bisson, all these names and all these coaches who have information and curriculum and a specific style and delivery to teach. For me, it's exciting. Like, oh, this person teaches this stuff in this way. Oh, David Sobolov over at Adventures in Voice Acting is all about Meisner because he studied with Sanford Meisner in person. How that should blow everybody's minds who are in the theater. And Tony Oliver, who teaches with this direction in this genre in this way. And there are so many other, Kirsten Day. There are so many voice actors and teachers and coaches and mentors who are legitimate and who are working professionals in this field. Melissa Medina, who are phenomenal teachers, and everybody teaches in different ways and methods and perspectives. For me, as an actor, as a voice actor, as well as an educator, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I've taken classes from all of these people that I've just mentioned, with the exception of a couple, and I believe you and me, it's in the works so that I can learn from these people, and every single one have their unique flair, perhaps, on
Mhm.
what they teach and how they teach, and it's fascinating. I can steal things from them. Not only that, I learn a lot from different people in different ways. And again, coming back to the point that acting is a study of human beings,
Mhm.
and I find it fulfilling, and I can't wait to learn more from more people.
Right, and then we'll go to the last question before my closing question, also from Karma Bites, is what kind of a booth do you have? And if you were to make a homemade vocal booth, what would you recommend?
Okay, yeah, my current booth, and this is probably going to be my one and only forever booth, is a Studio Bricks One Plus VO edition. So
Let me write
this
that
is
down.
slightly bigger than the just regular Studio Bricks One. This is the One Plus. It's a little bit longer, and the VO edition comes with like a nice little desk, additional sound treatment, and a mic arm, and a arm for a copy stand, in which I have a monitor mounted instead because I don't print copy. Um, Although Mark tells me that I should. So there's that, Mark Cashman. Um, so that's the booth that I work out of. I've had to purchase additional bass traps because my voice is so low frequency range. In my whisper room, I had 3 bass traps, and even then, it was starting to sound a little boxy. So in here, I have 5, strategically placed in various corners, so that the acoustics in here is dialed in according to the frequencies that I produce out of my mouth. Ventilation, wiring cable, I put it together myself, of course, and um, I right, and I have a Sennheiser 416 for commercial work, promo work, and I have a TLM 103 for character work and narration work. And everything is put together by Mogami cables for interference and quality and cable
Love
quality.
Mogami. Love
Same,
Mogami.
same. Thank
Mogami's the way
you.
to go.
I have the Apollo Twin Mark II with compressors in line for flyaways. Avalon 737 plugin for audio colors and preamp emulation on an iMac 27 from 2017, and I have a 5-inch driver PreSonus monitors for listening. And if I need to be precise, I put on the cans that are the Audio Technica ATH M30X, which seems to be the most accurate and natural, I suppose.
Those are the ones that I've got as well. Yeah, those are a
Um,
very good set of monitoring headphones.
and that's what my studio looks like. Yeah.
There was a microphone other than the TLM 103 that I'm having trouble picking up on. What was that? What was
Oh,
that
sorry.
one?
It's the Sennheiser MKH 416.
Perfect.
I'll type it in, I guess.
Stanheiser. That's
That's always the fun
German
part about,
names.
That's always
Woo!
the fun part about the tech is the entire mishmash of letters and numbers for for the names of these microphones.
Right.
That's actually not the hard part. It's the Sennheiser for me. It's the German. I can't latch on to it.
Oh, right, and their booth. Right, I forgot about that part. Sorry. For if you have this crazy amount of budget, great. Studio Bricks is probably like the best, to best choice and selection. Whisper rooms can sound great as well, as long as they're treated well on the inside. And if you don't have thousands of dollars to spend on a booth, then hopefully you're fortunate enough to have a walk-in closet that's large enough, or like a small study room, perhaps something along those lines. And then it's simply the matter of treating the interior, and do not buy those foam square triangle things from Amazon for $10, because they will not do any. They will do some things, but they will not be of much help. Instead, visit your local hardware store, whatever hardware store it may be, and pick up some insulation. specifically the Rockwell Safe and Sound
Mm-hmm.
or the Owens Corning 703. Those two things are specifically engineered and designed for audio absorption and audio blocking. So they
There's
work.
Good.
Yeah.
Uh,
So they work. How you gonna tell me to go ahead and you keep talking, huh? Specifically engineered for audio absorption and audio treatment, and they work really, really well inside a small space to dampen the sound waves from bouncing around. You don't want to be inhaling insulation, obviously, even though Rockwool is mineral. Simply visit a fabric store somewhere and buy a bunch of fabric and wrap it like a present in whatever color you like, and then hang it on your walls. Then they serve as great interior decor pieces as well as absorbing sound waves.
Do you want to get those named and post them in the chat so that they can so that Karma Bytes can get that
Sure.
information for the for them to search later, so that they and then perfect. And then yeah, so I think that only leaves Ark's closing question, really.
Yep.
At this point,
the closing question I have is what kind of advice would you have for anybody that's listening for getting into voice acting in general, or just life in general?
Yeah. For anyone who's thinking about working as a voice actor, training. I think training. As I've mentioned before, there are a great deal of information on the internet. I want to be a voiceactor.com is a great place to start. A lot of great helpful information there for anyone who wants to be a voiceactor.com. I would start from there. At the same time, the information that's there, as well as on other places, on websites and social media, whatever it may be, all the other information that's out there are not specifically tailored and contextualized to your journey, So I think finding a coach, finding a mentor who can take the information that they have that's available out there in the market and make it specific to your journey, to your context, is probably the greatest and the most efficient, let me say that, the most efficient way to move forward in your voice actor journey. There's a lot of information about like how to change oil. Coming back, I guess. There's a lot of information and videos you can find about how to change the oil in your car. But we know that certain models and makes take different oil filters and different oil grades, right? So that part of the information needs to be more specific and contextualized to your car. Mm-hmm. Imagine my surprise when I opened up the A.K.A. oil filter. It's like, oh, that's a 102, not 101. Dang it. I think having somebody by your side, in your corner, who can contextualize the information for your journey is probably the most important, I think, in the beginning stages anyway, of a voice actor's journey. For life, it's about happiness, and I don't want to sound cliche, and it is, and I apologize, but it's the truth. And happiness doesn't have to be voice acting. There are love crunching numbers on a spreadsheet. Absolutely. And that's their happiness, and they go to work with a smile, and good for them. Absolutely good for them. I can't do that. But it is for them. It's not for me. And is that okay? Of course that's okay. But voice acting, after 40 years of life, 36 years of life, I've realized that voice acting is my happiness. and this is what brings me happiness. I can act, I can teach, I can be with my family, spend time with them. This is my happiness, and I've not looked back. And the last 4 years have taught me that this is definitely, most definitely, my happiness. I hope my advice would be that I hope you develop enough self-awareness to be able to identify what your own happiness might be. And I would advise that you go in that direction, whether it be for work or hobby or self fulfillment or whatever it may be. Uh, Identify, analyze yourself, develop that self awareness, and identify what that happiness is, and go after it relentlessly with strong discipline. And be a good person. I don't know.
Yes.
Don't be a jerk. Be a good person.
Definitely.
Uplift people. Be nice to others. Don't be a jerk.
What
Those
was that
things
Korean
too.
word you said earlier?
Yeah, don't be a beep. Yeah, that exactly. That's exactly what I meant to say. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's everything I got for this stream. I do very much appreciate you taking the time to join us for this little Q&A. It's been very informative, and it's been a pretty pleasant talk to just try to get some more of this information out there for people, because I think it's definitely needed nowadays.
I had a great time. Thank you for having me. And any opportunity that I can seize, I'm sorry for using you. Any opportunities I can seize to spread this information that I believe in. I'm happy to do it. Of course.
Well,
We were very happy to have you. I had a lot of fun as well. It was a very great talk, and I mean, again, I had fun. It was a good time. And yeah, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. But so yeah, with that, I think I'm gonna say that that will be the closing statement for this stream. Thank you all for joining up on this, listening in. Hope you all learned as much as we did. And until then, look forward to the next stream that we have, where we'll be learning more, depending on who's coming in. It's either going to be from the musical side or the community manager side, who tend to deal with people on a much greater basis than most of us would normally be accustomed to. So more on that to come. But otherwise, thank you all for listening in. Hope to see you all then. June, once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. But with that, we're going to be closing out. Hope you all have a wonderful day.
Farewell.